Almost exactly a year since she lost her beloved husband, Britain's Queen Elizabeth is preparing for the culmination of the celebrations marking her Platinum Jubilee. Her reign has now entered an unprecedented 8th decade. Elizabeth ascended the throne in February 1952 after the death of her father. Well, to discuss her life and legacy to date, I'm joined for perspective by Robert Hardman. He's the author of Queen of Our Times, The Life of Elizabeth II. Tell us a little bit about your book. It's full of fresh insights, material into Elizabeth's life. You've spoken to some people who are very close to her. Tell us the answer to the big question, what's she really like? You describe that as her greatest paradox.
Yes, good morning, Sharon. I think it is one of the great paradoxes that she remains by far and away the most famous woman on earth. Her face, the most reproduced image in history on banknotes, coins, stamps, and everything else. And yet, here we are. She's in her 10th decade, and we're still asking the question, what's she really like? I've tried to address that in my book. As you say, I've spoken to large numbers of people who know her very well. She gave me access, and I think this was crucial, to her father's wartime diaries. Her mentor, the person who influenced her, I think, more than any other when it came to being monarch, was her father, King George VI. And he was very much shaped by the events of the Second World War. And these diaries, they run to 11 volumes. They're locked away in Windsor Castle. And they're very candid, they're very honest. And they explain, I think, a lot about her. They explain her attitude to crises, to challenges. His account of, for example, being dive-bombed in his own home. We have a sort of a settled narrative that during the war, the royal family showed stiff upper lip, and they did, and they stood firm. But what we didn't see, but what we now know through the diaries, is just how much a shock they felt at times. How the king writes, he says, I shouldn't even be writing this down, but I'm finding it I'm very nervous. I keep looking out of the window. This was a day after he was bombed in his own home. I do see parallels. We hear a lot of parallels between Winston Churchill and Vladimir Zelensky in Ukraine. But when you look at the king's role in the Second World War, you can see parallels with George VI too. So this is this great influence on her. And you fast forward to the present and talk to those around her. And the one thing they all say is that her default position in any sort of crisis is stillness. She never panics. I couldn't find any example of her rushing to action. Some people have criticised her over the years for maybe being a bit slow to act on some things, but it's very hard to accuse her of rushing into things, of panicking. So I hope I painted a fresher, more intimate portrait of her, but as ever, I mean, there's still more that I'd love to know.
Well, that's the thing. And you say in the book that most people, we can't even begin to comprehend 8 decades of leadership. But you say also that her legacy, it remains a work in progress. But Robert, are we approaching the final chapter in that book? And if so, what does that mean for Britain?
Well, let's hope not. We're approaching the Platinum Jubilee. I mean, we've never had one of these before. We are in uncharted territory. She's the longest-lived, longest-reigning monarch in our history. She's not the longest reigning monarch in world history. She has to wait until May 2024 to beat your candidate, France's Louis XIV, who started as a boy king, of course. But no, I mean, her legacy is all around us. I mean, when you look at the nation that she inherited in 1952, it was a church-going, monocultural nation, very much laid out on sort of class grounds, very hierarchical, very traditionalist. And the fact that she and her institution are as popular now as they were then, I think is remarkable. She's had to move with the times. It hasn't always been easy. There have been plenty of family crises. They've been very well documented. But I think there is this sort of narrative, what I call the declinist narrative, that everything's sort of been going wrong and it gets worse all the time. And we see that if we watch films like The Crown, that there is this sort of perception that being monarch is this terrible burden and that everything's sort of the whole time she's being put upon and she's rather miserable. And it's simply not like that. Around her, always around her, talk how she's a very upbeat person. She genuinely enjoys being queen. Most of this reign has been on an upward trajectory. There have been very pronounced periods when there've been problems. I mean, we're in, I think, a sort of crisis period at the moment. It's nothing like as bad as the 90s, but yes, there are the two issues to do with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex leaving the family and the Duke of York effectively facing permanent ostracism from public life. So, these things go on, but when you stand back, you look at the big portrait, you look at the broad canvas, you see what she's been through, you see how she's led her nation through many difficult periods, and you get to sense that here's a monarch who very much likes what she's doing and has every intention of carrying on, because she took an oath at her coronation and she's not giving up now.
And Robert, you mentioned there the controversy involving who's said to be her favourite son, Andrew. We also, of course, had Prince Harry leaving the UK. How do you think her relationships with the two of those in particular have been affected by those events?
Well, she's very good at compartmentalising her life. So there's the sort of the business side of things, the royal, the monarch, the institution. And with the Sussexes, they've decided they're not part of that institution. They wanted to be half in, half out, and the Queen was very firm. It doesn't work like that. You can't do that. And that's why they've gone off to California with the Duke of York. He's made repeated major errors of judgment, an extraordinarily badly judged interview on the BBC, and now, of course, he has the ignominy of having paid off an accuser he claims he never met. So institutionally, there's no way back for him. However, as one of her closest aides told me, she has a big tent philosophy on life. It's a big tent, there's room for everybody. So at a personal level, she's still very much in touch with Prince Harry. He's a much-loved grandson. They talk on the phone a lot. I think his relations with her are probably better than with any other member of the family. And with the Duke of York, he's still her son. He's still the son who went off to war. He's still the father of two of her granddaughters, and there's clearly a bond there. People often say, "Is he a favourite?" I mean, I think like every parent, the Queen would sort of roll her eyes. And I think it's much more nuanced than that. But Prince Andrew, definitely, he's the one who lives closest to her. He's obviously got plenty of time on his hands now, so he's always sort of on the phone to her. I think she feels he's made some very grave errors in life, but you can't underestimate the importance of her faith, her Christian values, that element of forgiveness. You see, that's another thread that runs right through her reign and through her life. And so I think she'll always have time for Prince Andrew, but I think it's going to have to be private time, not public.
Unfortunately, we'll have to leave it there, Robert. There's so much more we could talk to you about, though. That's Robert Hardman, the author of Queen of Our Times, The Life of Elizabeth II. Thank you so much for your time this morning.